been pretty vocal about this scheme on Twitter. We've heard from the Labour leader that he's saying this is just merely a distraction from Partygate, saying the scheme is unworkable, unethical and extortionate. What do you make of that?
Well, I think Starmer's accused the Prime Minister, anything the Prime Minister is doing which involves doing his job, as being a distraction technique. I seem to remember that Keir Starmer was saying the Prime Minister dealing with the Ukrainian situation, one of the biggest, arguably the biggest development on the European continent since the Second World War, was a distraction technique. This is apparently a distraction technique as well. No, this is just, it's actually, that in itself is a distraction technique from Keir Starmer, who, in my view, wants to deny the thing that we all know, which is that the Labour Party, as far as I can see, are anti any kind of immigration control, are an open borders party. And by all means, they should make the case and stand by why they believe that is the right thing to do. But I just think they should be honest to the British people.
Well, let's get away from the Labour Party and talk about the charity sector. There was an open letter that was signed by over 160 charities in the UK calling for the government to scrap these plans, saying in the letter, quote, "It's shamefully cruel." What do you make of that, and how would you respond to those charities?
Well, I mean, they're obviously quite clearly wrong, and they're quite clearly out of step with the majority of British people, as is Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. And I think it's an incredibly wrong-headed position that they've got. I mean, they're wrong. We know they're wrong. They don't represent the views of the British people. Let's move on and crack on in sorting out this problem.
And how have your constituents responded to these plans? Because I don't know about you, I've had a fair few emails coming in.
But Deanna, you like me, you'll know your constituency, and you'll have your own ways of trying to read the mood of your constituents, which doesn't involve upon going off how small number of your constituents who tweet at you on Twitter and email you. So I mean, I've probably knocked on about 300, 400 doors over the last couple of days. The Rwanda deal has come up, and I think barring one person yesterday, everybody was supportive of it. So I think that's where the majority of the British people are. And when people say, oh, this is hugely controversial, well, it's hugely controversial within the Westminster bubble, and it's hugely controversial within the do-gooding sector. But actually, it's not hugely controversial for most fair-minded British people who, yes, want to welcome genuine refugees, yes, want us to be a country which is pro-immigration, but want to have control, because the key thing here is about control. We've taken control of legal immigration. We've got to take control of our asylum system as well. And actually, every single person who comes over from France, who is an economic migrant, who's able to stay here, it limits our ability to show compassion towards people coming from Ukraine, from Afghanistan. Because of the pressure it puts on public services, and of course in terms of the people who have lost their lives from the Channel as well. For every reason, this is the right thing to do. It's very regrettable that the Archbishop of Canterbury has decided to make the comments that he's made today. Today should be a day where we come together and we reflect, and it's a peaceful day. So for him just to wade into a complex political matter, and again got on the wrong side of public opinion, I think is bad for the Church of England. And I think it's bad for his own credibility. It's not the first time he's done it, and I think it's incredibly regrettable.
I think one thing that keeps coming up, Tom, is around the cost of this scheme. I mean, the Labour Party have said it's extortionate, but just looking at it, it's £120 million initially, plus then clearly there's going to be the ongoing costs of paying for the accommodation, paying for the actual flights out to Rwanda. How would you respond to criticism about that?
Well, in terms of the cost point, I mean, there's obviously a serious cost to the status quo. I mean, just outside, Ipswich, we've got 100 economic migrants being, in a 4-star hotel. I mean, how much does that cost? And also, with the numbers going up, it was 28,000 last year. It's predicted it could be about 50,000 this year. It's almost like a never-ending cost, and we don't know, and which is escalating and escalating and escalating. The thing about what we're proposing is, yes, there is a significant cost up front, but hopefully the deterrent effect will mean that it can deal with the issue quite quickly. We saw with Australia, they had a massive problem with illegal immigration. They embraced offshore processing, and today they don't have a big problem with illegal immigration. The left will say, oh, they tried it in Australia, it didn't work. It did work. It worked very, very well. It worked incredibly effectively. It worked so effectively that the Labour Party in Australia implemented it as well. It's very lazy for them to say, and some of them even said that Australia have stopped doing it. They haven't stopped doing it. They stopped doing it in Papua New Guinea. They're still doing it in the other island location. I forgot the name of it.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Well, Tom Hunt there, MP for Ipswich, on the government's plans to send migrants to Rwanda. Tom, thank you for joining us on the show this morning.